Europe is girding itself to relaunch its constitutional process, but at the same time, another round of negotiations, seemingly more technical, but also highly political, is looming on the horizon. This is the revision of the 2007 to 2012 budget. The EU is committed to revising it next year, and in any case, no later than 2009. One European parliamentarians decided to tackle its most complex and controversial section. Alain Lamassoure is doing the rounds in Europe to try and convince his colleagues in national parliaments to grant the European budget its own fiscal receipts.
I've decided to work with the national parliaments and stick my head in the lion's jaws, because traditionally budget problems are where national parliaments play the major role. Europe needs new financial resources. National parliaments are likely to be the most reticent in voting for new money. They have to be closely associated so that they themselves draw up their proposals.
Lamassoure went to Rome at the start of February to meet Italian parliamentarians and Emma Bonino, the European Affairs Minister. After scores of meetings around the EU, the same theme comes up again and again. National MPs are poorly informed about the EU budget.
I'm the first to talk about this. In all national parliaments, there's a total ignorance from the start about the way Europe is financed. So I try to show them as objectively as possible, and in the best light, of course.
What's more, there are some crazy ideas out there about how much Europe costs. Or when you tell them, here are the numbers, it's roughly the same as Lombardy's regional budget, more or less.
Exactly.
The Frenchman avoids provocation. As he goes round the capitals, he avoids the dreaded words that spark furious argument: European taxes. Lamassoure's idea is to take part of an already established tax and, without increasing the overall tax burden, adding it to the EU budget. It could be a fraction of the VAT take, or fuel, alcohol or tobacco taxes, or corporation tax. For this centre-left Italian MEP, there are also alternatives.
I believe that part of our environmental or energy taxes could be consecrated to the EU budget. This could be very interesting and needs more study.
There's a similar positive response from the Belgian Parliament, traditionally pro-European. For the President of the Budget and Finance Committee, the most important thing is not to alienate European taxpayers.
I think it's a good idea as long as it doesn't increase the overall European tax burden. I don't think citizens should have the impression that Europe increases their taxes, especially as many member states already have high rates.
Lamassoure's ideas get a mixed reception depending on the audience, and it seems a Herculean task, as double unanimity is required, not only in the European Council, but in each member state's parliament.
France has given these ideas quite a favourable reception, and in fact most of the Mediterranean nations think along similar lines. In Northern Europe, minds are open, but there's scepticism too. Germany is expressing plenty of doubts, and I'll have to return there certainly. And as so often when the big issues are involved, our British friends are a little reserved.
In fact, London is very hostile. Any move to start again from scratch on the EU's own resources might jeopardise Margaret Thatcher's infamous rebate cheque, clawed back from the EU budget at the Fontainebleau summit. Despite this discount, for years Britain has sent more money to Brussels than France. In the firing line is the Common Agricultural Policy, which benefits above all the French countryside. London insists the starting point should be CAP reform, and not tearing up the cheque.
The rebate is there to correct a gross imbalance. Part of the reason for that imbalance is the Common Agricultural Policy, which even now takes up 40% of European Union spending. So obviously, if you manage to address the underlying reasons for the gross unfairness of the current system, then you would be able to address the issue of the correction mechanism, the rebate to Britain and the other countries.
The British rebate has become more complex than rocket science. The resultant shortfall has to be made up by other members, and some big contributors, like Germany, have to be compensated in turn to keep the general balance of the system intact. Moreover, things have changed. In the 1980s, Britain was broke and living standards low. Today, Britain is one of Europe's richest members. For many people, enough's enough.
I think that the CAP, although very useful over a number of decades, has had its day. In any case, in its current form, I think this policy is actually detrimental for a number of developing nations, so I think it would be logical to review the CAP in the context of the reorganization of trade at the WTO. Having said this, I also think there's no reason why the British rebate should continue.
The European budget will be 820 billion euros for the 2007 to 2012 period, or the equivalent of a coffee a day per inhabitant. The overall size is therefore modest, but the way the money is spent is badly understood. So badly, the budgetary horse trading adds to the growing general mistrust of Europe in people's minds.
I don't want to say we're unhappy with Europe or that we're anti-European. That's ridiculous. We can't be against Europe. We're against the Europe we're being sold, where we're being kept in the dark about the whys, the whos, the hows, and the where's the money going. We know it's coming from our taxes. Apparently it's one cappuccino a day, but who's drinking it?
What citizens want is clear. They want spending to be transparent. They want to be clearly shown what Europe is for, and policies adapted to the challenges of the 21st century.
The EU has much more important goals for the next 100 years than agricultural policy. This is why we need significant changes in spending structures. We need to spend more on improving competitivity, education, research, and combating climate change. These are all things we can do better at a European level.
This resetting of political priorities has to be seen in a larger context. According to the fresh proposals for a constitution being put forward by current EU President Germany, which may or may not be concluded next year or the year after, budgetary needs will change.
If Europe will go in creation and finalization of internal market, if Europe will deepen integration, of course, the budget will be a little bit different as we have now. If Europe will be disintegrating, of course, the financial resources probably will go opposite direction that we would like to see.
Alain Lamassoure realizes any failure in the institutional negotiations will torpedo his initiative, but this is not deterring him from quietly plugging away at the budget question, a long and winding road down which he's convinced lies the key to a politically united Europe.